ChatGPT and Gen AI tools have hit the mainstream. The chatter was everywhere, by almost everyone. We feel the discussion has been more philosophical than practical. We know enterprise technologists are using real AI to create efficiencies that result in real business outcomes. So, we created a show to talk to real practitioners about real-world active projects that are leveraging this exciting new technical advantage. Welcome to LiveAI.
Thanks for joining us for our second episode of LiveAI. Sticking with the show's theme of real-life enterprise AI use cases, with me today is Colby Voss, who leads the AI startup community for HPE. Welcome to the show, Colby.
Thanks for having me, Tony. Really happy to be here.
Can you share with our audience the use case you'll be discussing with us today?
Absolutely. So today I'll be discussing a recent Vision AI use case that we deployed at a US-based grocery center to help with shrinkage and theft protection.
And how far into this effort are you right now, and what results have you seen?
So the solution's fully deployed. We rolled it out to over 600 stores in the US here, and we're looking to expand on some of those use cases, but it's all an on-prem HPE solution.
You know, I love hearing about retail use cases for AI. The late, great Steve Jobs had a vision for retail stores that faced a tremendous amount of skeptics. It was an industry that's seen very little change. And he went on to launch the Apple Store and revolutionize how people shop, ease of flow, product placement, etc. As we get into your specific use case, we'll see that this is a similar concept, but on steroids. Let's go back to the start of the project. Due to client confidentiality, we can't name them, but can you tell us the challenge that they were looking to solve?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that we wanted to solve for them is they saw a 20% increase in shrinkage or theft coming from their stores, which was resulting in about $6 million weekly of loss in revenue for them. And another thing they were running up against was Windows data center licensing and how they were going to aggregate that and tie that into a new solution.
So this problem with theft, was it something to where this started off where AI was immediately going to be a part of the solution, or how did they arrive that they could even use AI to help solve with that?
I think that they saw the change in the market. They saw a lot of Vision AI use cases being utilized in the market today, specifically in the retail industry. And when we think about things like the point of sale systems that are a part of all of the self-checkouts we use nowadays, they were leaning on HPE to stand up a Vision AI use case specifically for them.
At what point did HPE enter the picture?
So the good thing is that this specific customer has a long-standing relationship with HPE from both a compute and storage perspective. In some of the recent acquisitions from a hardware and software perspective that we've made along the recent years, they turned to us to stand up an AI use case as well and leveraging some of those recent acquisitions.
I feel like HPE is like the biggest secret in the AI community when it comes to on-premise versions of how you facilitate these types of solutions. Can you give us, the audience, a little bit of background on, why you think HPE is, a big part of why we should think about them from an AI perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've been thinking about this for a long time, and I could show you a timeline of going back to 2018 when we made the acquisition of things like Cray and the Apollo line of servers that sort of accelerated our compute instances to handle some of these workloads. And then some of the acquisitions we made from a software perspective to make the life of a data scientist a little bit easier, how they schedule jobs, how they handle fine-tuning of specific models that they can handle on-prem, how we address different power and cooling environments from a co-location perspective. A lot of these data centers are not necessarily prepared to handle these type of workloads and this type of requirement from an AI workload perspective. And I think that we address pretty much a full stack solution in tying in all these different capabilities from a software, hardware, and power and cooling perspective.
Well, I hear that you're actually personally a huge proponent of on-prem AI. Could you shed a little background on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that HPE's vision for a long time now has been a hybrid model, and we accept that a lot of the customers nowadays have some sort of hybrid operation where they have some cloud workloads, some on-prem workloads, and I think that that's going to continue to be the case in the AI landscape as well. I can certainly see the use case if you only want to spin something up for maybe a few days or hours. But I think it goes back to the security and compliance operations as well as a cost could be made as well. I think that when we think about things like code generation or inference workloads, those are much better suited for on-prem use cases, because if you're constantly running this inference server on-prem versus in the cloud, you're not going to be paying any sort of data transfer fees that you would get from something like the cloud. And then from a compliance perspective, when I think about other, AI use cases, even in the retail space, do you really want to be giving up all of that customer data? Do you really want to be sharing all of your code base, your install base, your customer profiles, your ordering schedules with some of the large scale hyperscalers?
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of investment, these things can be pretty expensive. And when you think about how to apply AI to some kind of business use case, how did the customer think about taking advantage of existing investments?
Yeah, so that's a great point. They could actually reutilize a lot of their initial investments they made just from a security and point of sale perspective. So we have a broad ecosystem of ISVs that can offer this type of vision AI software. And what that allows us to do is sort of lean on them to integrate and set up these systems with their existing IP cameras, with their existing point of sale connections there, and utilize those cameras and resources that they already have deployed at the edge there. And then using something like HPE servers, sort of connect all the dots and stand up that vision AI platform.
So the software they ended up deploying from a third party was really taking advantage of data that they already had. They just weren't creating extra value from it.
Exactly.
Now, it sounds like a pretty massive video-based system. Give our audience an idea of the coverage needed and the data that the cameras are taking in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a variety of different reference architectures that we can lean on, depending on the amount of IP cameras you guys have installed in your environment. We start as small as 30 cameras and can scale up to thousands of cameras depending on the exact use case. But we have integrations on a variety of different aspects of the store. At the point of sale, on an aisle by aisle case basis with the IP cameras sitting there as well. In the back of the store with procurement and delivery. So it sort of scales as easily as you want it to. You can start small with only looking at the point of sale, reducing theft. But, as we've expanded and, looking at this specific customer that we're talking about, how do we alert team members whenever maybe there's a stocking issue or a certain product is not visible to a customer in a specific aisle? When we look at deliveries, are there any anomalies with delivery schedules or pallets missing or not in the place they should be? So from a HPE perspective, you can start as small as one server. But as we're talking about one of this, large scale grocery providers, we're scaling to, hundreds of stores, and we have some sort of main database applications that are sitting at sort of a home command center that's doing a lot of the processing as well. So we can start small with a few stores and scale out to hundreds as we see fit.
Do you have an idea of what results they were able to see? Like if the number was 6 million a week, have they seen a decline that's happened already with where they've begun to deploy this technology?
Absolutely. So we've seen like an 80% reduction in customer innovations. I think that we've all had the experience of being at that self-checkout and, it's all scale-based. So as soon as you scan an item, if you don't set it down, you're going to be alerted and you're going to, get some input from the machine itself. But just from a cost savings perspective, we've seen an 80% reduction in shrinkage just since the time we've deployed the solution. So immediate time to value, and I think that that's important in this age of AI now. All these customers are looking for validated, already ready to use solutions that are going to provide value day one, that they're not going to have to spend years and years standing up and spending all this time and investment on from a people and a capital perspective.
Well, and because there was a third-party software, an ISV that came into the picture, how much work did the client actually have to do to customize the solution, or was it pretty close out of the box?
Pretty close out of the box. We work closely with the ISV provider. Like I said, we have some of those reference architectures already stood up. From a solutioning perspective, we kind of know what the hardware requirements look like on the back end. It's one of our validated nodes for Azure Stack HCI, accelerated by NVIDIA GPUs. So not uncommon to see in the market today. So from an architecture perspective, sort of we handle that on the back end with that ISV to make sure that the customer had exactly what they needed from a performance perspective.
Nice. Well, could you give us a breakdown, speaking of the technology, you started going a little bit of detail what's that technology stack look like end to end? You've got the cameras up front, but how's the solution actually work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, pretty general server use case. So this specific platform is just a DL380, the most sold server in our portfolio, a 2U2 processor system that's running Azure Stack HCI, which is an on-prem Azure sort of portal experience for the customer. So they're getting that same type of cloud operating experience, but with on-prem hardware that they can control. Not super robust as far as, some of the point of entry goes. So we think about, some customers think that they have to spend millions and millions of dollars to stand up an AI use case. That's not necessarily the case. From a data collection perspective, we've got about 30 terabytes sitting on the host themselves, about 512 gigs of memory. So it's not as expensive as a point of entry as you may think.
Do you think the ongoing costs would get into more things like retention? Because if there's not much customization, not much training that they have to do that's been handed off to a third party, you're reaping the benefits of taking a solution that's already been developed by somebody else. And then from there, it's just about you being able to process that and then any archival purposes that you might have beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. Just because, the ISV is going to be handling a lot of the model training and fine tuning to, tailor to specific use cases. As we've already discussed, theft protection was one of the first use cases that we wanted to roll out in phase one. But as we sort of move on, we want to expand that to a variety of different things. And just from an on-prem perspective, since they're already leveraging those models, you're just going to be pinging against that server consistently, not doing a lot of the fine tuning of the training yourself. So you sort of get to reap the benefits of the inference capabilities of using these models versus fine tuning them, training them yourself. And then it's sort of a capped cost in that regard, because that server lifecycle is going to be around for years to come. You don't have to consistently go back to the public cloud, retrain workloads, and then constantly paying those data transfer fees to get the data back to the customer, back to that end user. So it's pretty big win for on-prem AI all around, and we're really excited about all of the opportunity we have to deploy this across a few different other use cases.
Colby, I love this use case for, one of the reasons is that everyone has unique data, and that data has inherent value. And when you start to think about build versus buy, the amount of time, the talents, and the investment it takes to go train on that data versus being able to buy a solution off the shelf that can leverage your data, but has been, you've offloaded that development cost to someone else. From your seat in the HPE AI startup community, what are some other either use cases or solutions that you've seen out there that you think are really compelling from, look, I've got this data, I've got use cases, I don't necessarily have the budget and the time to be able to do this myself, but there's solutions out there that I no idea that exist. The space is changing so rapidly. Have you seen anything else out there that you think is really compelling?
Yeah, absolutely. Another reason when we had in the U.S. was that convenience stores, gas stations across the U.S. that's really good at security detection. If someone's entering the store that may be a threat to the people there. Another great option is that you're taking a scan of the hot foods, which is one of the highest margin items at some of these convenience stores. And looking at when they need to be replaced, so you don't have someone consistently walking around the store from a stock keeping and hot foods perspective that needs to re-update or replace the foods in that roller, so to say. And like I said,
who doesn't like old hot food?
Yeah, exactly. You just want their hot dog to be sitting there for 3 days before you eat it. So it's super nice, and then we look at things like dwell time, how long are customers spending in certain areas of the store? What routes are they taking across the store to, better optimize and, put those high value items in front of them a little bit sooner. So it all ties back to, real business value and, how we can, actually demonstrate that for the business to say, this is not just a rabbit hole you're going to go down from AI. This is going to deliver real value to your organization.
Thanks for that, Colby. I think as we wind this thing down, you get to talk to clients all over the place. You're seeing wins and real life stories happen all over the place. Any final words of advice you might have for people who are out there beginning this journey? We hear a lot that people are either in the stage where they're diving straight into use cases or they're not really sure what to do. They know the hype. There's some pressure to adopt. Any words of advice you'd have for that part of our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. It's extremely overwhelming for a lot of these organizations. Seems to AI is the big buzzword. We hear it all in the financial reviews of all these organizations and how we're going to implement AI, how are we going to streamline some of these AI services, and the open source community as well as some of these other private organizations are adapting this rapidly. And HPE, I think, does a good job from our perspective of, really sitting down, investigating use cases with the customer. We can set things up like an ideation workshop to sit down, really tailor some of the solutions exactly to the use cases and value that the customer wants to derive. So we really take it back from a step one approach of seeing what other customers are doing across your specific industry, recent wins we've had, and really tailoring that solution to exactly what the end result is going to be. Sitting down from a day one perspective instead of just diving in and just hoping it'll work.
Yeah. How do you turn that into, how do you better your chances for success? I love that advice. Well, thanks, Colby. Thanks for joining us today, sharing your wisdom with us in this great use case.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to LiveAI. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation. This episode is sponsored by Trace3. To learn more about why you should connect with them about your enterprise practical AI use case, visit them at trace3.com or look for them on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.